Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into, well, a really interesting area: the history and the current state of labor shortages, specifically within the German construction sector.
Hmm.
You, our listener, actually flagged a whole set of reports and analyses on this for us, and it's proven to be a fascinating topic. So, yeah, thanks for that tip.
It's definitely a critical issue. I mean, when you look at how a major economy like Germany builds and maintains its infrastructure, its
Hmm.
housing, well, the availability of labor is just fundamental, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Understanding these dynamics can tell us quite a lot about broader economic trends, too.
Right. So our mission with this deep dive is to really pull out the most important insights from these sources you shared. We want to get a handle on the historical context because it seems this isn't a completely new problem right
Not
now,
at all.
and really pinpoint the key challenges and the solutions that are being talked about right now. We've got quite a mix of material historical stuff, current analyses of skills gaps.
Yeah, good range. And one of the first things that jumps out when you delve into this material is that while the nature of the challenges evolved, the German construction sector has faced labor-related issues for, well, quite some time.
Okay, so let's start right back at the beginning then. Our sources take us back to the immediate aftermath of World War II. Cities like Cologne, Dusseldorf, largely destroyed. The need for rebuilding was just massive.
Yeah, immense.
Now, even if it wasn't officially called a labor shortage like we think of it today, the sheer scale of destruction and the demographic hit from the war must have meant demand for construction work was incredibly high.
Oh, certainly. It likely exceeded the immediate supply of available workers. That's a really important foundation to lay, actually.
Right.
That initial huge demand kind of set the stage for how Germany would tackle its labor needs in the decades that followed.
And then, of course, we get the Wirtschaftswunder, that, famous economic miracle.
The boom years.
Suddenly, the whole economy is taking off, and construction is right there, playing this crucial role, building everything needed to support the boom.
And unemployment back then in the 60s was incredibly low, like below 1.5% sometimes,
Uh,
which indicates a pretty widespread scarcity of labor, really, across all sectors.
and construction was absolutely central to that growth. Building factories, homes, roads, all of it needed a huge workforce.
Exactly.
So here's where it gets really interesting looking at the sources. To tackle these widespread labor shortages, not just in construction but everywhere, the German government kicked off the Gastarbeiter program. Started with Italy in 55, right?
Yes, that's right. Italy first, then Spain, Greece, Turkey, Portugal, Yugoslavia followed. What's fascinating here, though, is how the initial focus of that guest worker program sort of shifted over time.
How so?
Well, it started mainly aimed at filling industrial jobs,
Mm.
manufacturing, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But as that economic boom just kept rolling and the domestic labor pool got tighter and tighter, well, guest workers started filling more and more roles in construction, too.
The numbers really tell that story, don't they? Between 61 and 72, something like 288,000 foreign employees entered the construction sector specifically.
Yeah, it's a huge number, a significant chunk of the total increase in foreign employment during that time. It strongly suggests a real gap, domestic labor supply gap, just for construction.
So, a key insight there is how a nation can adapt, maybe to immediate labor needs through immigration, but also the long term societal shifts that creates. Maybe relevant today.
Definitely relevant. And the sources also point to why this reliance on guest workers in construction grew. It seems German workers were increasingly moving towards the expanding tertiary sector.
Ah, so service jobs like trade, banking, insurance, government roles.
Exactly. Things perhaps seen as, more desirable. Or maybe just less physically demanding, leaving vacancies in those primary and secondary sectors like construction.
Right. And it wasn't just a feeling, the data backs it up. You mentioned low unemployment, but also from 1960 to 73, the job vacancy rate in Germany consistently exceeded the unemployment rate.
Yeah, that sustained high demand for labor across the whole economy definitely hit construction hard. They needed people.
Okay, then we see another shift. 1973, the oil crisis hits, triggers a recession.
Right, and recruitment of new guest workers stops, halted. But, and this is really important, many of those guest workers and their families, they stayed in Germany,
Oh.
which had a significant long-term impact on the demographics, obviously, but also on the labor pool itself.
So that likely provided some kind of buffer for the construction sector, maybe, especially as that initial wave of domestic post-war workers started getting older.
Plausibly, yeah. It eased immediate pressures as the domestic workforce aged. Then, another huge event. German reunification in 1990.
Right, that brought a short-term influx of labor, didn't it? From East Germany for construction projects in the West.
It did. There was a boom in renovating and building infrastructure in the former East, but also workers moved west. So it was a relatively immediate labor adjustment for a specific demand spike.
Interesting. Connecting this to the bigger picture, though. While reunification gave that initial labor boost.
The long-term integration, yeah, that involved really complex structural adjustments, economic disparities, things that would eventually influence labor mobility in lots of ways, not just construction. It wasn't simple.
Gotcha. And then we enter a period that might seem surprising, given today's concerns. The late 90s, early 2000s, Germany saw economic stagnation, didn't it? High unemployment.
That's right. The sick man of Europe period, as it was sometimes called. Unemployment hit a record high, around 4.5 million people back in 2005.
So the focus shifted completely. It wasn't about finding workers anymore.
Exactly. The main worry then was a lack of jobs. Then came the Hartz reforms, those big labor market changes between 2003 and 2005.
Right, aimed at increasing flexibility, pushing job seeking.
Yeah, changes to unemployment benefits, labor rules.
Yeah.
The goal was reducing overall unemployment. It probably made hiring easier for construction indirectly, maybe, but that wasn't the central problem they were trying to solve then.
Okay. Now let's fast forward to the 2010s. The narrative just flips again, doesn't it?
Completely. We start hearing these growing concerns about a shortage of skilled labor, specifically in German construction.
And that's a really critical distinction from those earlier times, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's not just a general lack of bodies anymore. It's a specific deficit in skilled trades. We're talking building trades, but excluding electricians, apparently painters, industrial mechanics, electronics techs, plumbers, specific construction worker skills.
Right. It reflects how projects are getting more complex, more technical.
Exactly. And maybe, potentially, a decline in young people choosing those vocational training paths.
Okay, so what are the drivers? The sources point to several key factors for this modern shortage. The first one seems huge: the aging workforce and just general demographic decline.
Yeah, this is a big one across many developed economies, but really hitting Germany. The baby boomer generation, born in the 50s and 60s, they're retiring now.
Right.
That means a massive outflow of experienced workers from construction. And with low birth rates for years, there just aren't enough younger people entering the workforce to replace them.
There was an estimate mentioned something like 7 million retirements by 2036 if trends don't change.
Yeah, a stark number. And it's not just Germany. Many EU countries have seen construction employment drop. Plus, you've got a big chunk of the current workforce who are over 50.
And construction is physically demanding work.
Right. That might lead some to retire earlier than they might in other sectors.
Okay, so demographics is number one. What else? The sources keep mentioning the declining attractiveness of the sector.
This is a real perception problem, it seems. Even with improvements in pay, better tech, more safety focus, that old image of construction persists.
Hard physical labor, outdoors in all weather, maybe chemicals, repetitive tasks.
Yeah, that stuff still deters a lot of young people, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still very male-dominated, which, limits the potential labor pool right there.
And then there's the skills issue itself. The kind of skills needed are changing fast.
Definitely. You've got more digital tech coming in, like BIM.
Building information modeling.
Right, the digital planning and management. Plus, the huge push for sustainable, energy-efficient building, the whole green transition.
So you need people skilled in digital tools, new sustainable materials, installing renewable energy systems like heat pumps or solar.
Exactly. That demands upskilling the current workers and changing the vocational training programs to match. It's a big shift.
And we can see this in the data, right? The vacancy rates.
Oh, yeah. Germany's construction vacancy rate hit 6.5% in 2023. That's up from 5.7% in 2019, so it's climbing.
And building trades were specifically called out as a high shortage occupation in 2024.
It's not just anecdotes. The numbers confirm the trend.
And the future projections are, well, a bit worrying. Some estimates suggesting a shortage of maybe 100,000 construction workers by 2030.
If current trends hold, yes. And that KfW IFO Skilled Labor Barometer you mentioned earlier, the survey affirms. In April 23, over 42% of all German firms said lack of skilled workers was hindering business. Construction was at 36%.
Which is still huge.
Yeah, and it had been even higher, over 39% back in mid-2022.
And these shortages, they have very real consequences, don't they?
Absolutely. You hear more and more about project delays,
Yeah.
higher labor costs because companies are competing for the same limited pool of skilled people.
And even cancellations, I think the sources mentioned some residential projects being scrapped.
Yeah, due to a combination of things, labor shortages being one, but also rising material costs and higher interest rates, making projects unviable.
There was even a figure mentioned, like German companies could potentially generate maybe 49 billion euros more in revenue in 2024 alone if they had enough skilled workers.
Yeah, that really puts a number on the economic hit, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so what's being done? It's clear the government and the industry itself are aware and trying things. What about the government response?
Well, a major focus is trying to attract skilled foreign workers. They've revised immigration policies, like the Skilled Immigration Act that came in March 2020, and they've updated it since.
Okay, so what do those changes do? Make it easier to come?
Essentially, yeah. Lowering bureaucratic hurdles for qualified people from outside the EU, streamlining how foreign qualifications get recognized, in some cases easing up on the language requirements that might have been a barrier before.
And there are specific agreements, too, with Western Balkan countries.
That's right, to facilitate labor migration from there. And it's part of this broader skilled labor strategy, which aims to sort of boost Germany's own domestic workforce potential and actively recruit from the EU and other countries.
Okay, so immigration is one track. What about training within Germany?
Yeah, that's the other big push.
Right.
Trying to make vocational training more attractive, modernizing the program themselves, adapting them to these new skill needs we talked about.
Like digital skills, green building skills.
Exactly. And also working on the public image, trying to shift perceptions with campaigns like Time to Make or Next Level Trade.
Trying to make skilled trades look cool again.
Basically, yeah,
Yeah.
highlighting the opportunities. Plus, there's government support for craft businesses with marketing, digitalization, recruitment help, and indirectly, things like housing subsidies or support for climate-friendly heating.
Ah, because that drives demand for construction work.
Right. Keeps the sector busy, which hopefully supports jobs.
Makes sense. And what about the industry itself? What are construction companies doing?
Well, they're responding too. You see companies raising wages, trying to attract and keep people, trying to improve working conditions to make the jobs more appealing.
And technology.
Definitely. More adoption of new tech, automation where possible, things like off-site modular production building sections in a factory that can improve efficiency and maybe reduce the need for quite so many workers on the actual site.
Interesting. So trying to make the work itself more productive.
Yeah. And also actively working on rebranding the industry, like the government campaigns, highlighting the tech side, the importance of the sector for housing, for the energy transition.
And maybe trying to keep older workers longer.
That's being looked at too. Exploring strategies like offering more age-appropriate tasks, making workplace adjustments, trying to retain that valuable experience for as long as possible.
Okay. So if we try and bring this all together,
Hmm.
we've seen the German construction sector face different labor challenges over time. Huge post-war rebuilding demands met partly by guest workers,
Hmm.
then periods of slowdown and high unemployment, and now this critical shortage of skilled labor, driven by demographics, changing perceptions, evolving skill needs.
Right. And the consequences of this current shortage are pretty significant. Project delays, higher costs, hitting the economy's ability to build what it needs.
But it's encouraging, maybe, to see this multi-pronged approach from both government and industry trying to tackle it. Immigration reform, better vocational training, embracing technology.
Yeah, they're certainly trying various angles. It's a complex problem, so it probably needs a complex set of solutions.
Absolutely. Which leads us nicely to our final thought for you, the listener. Considering all these historical trends we've talked about and all the initiatives happening right now, what do you think is the single most critical factor that's going to determine whether the German construction sector successfully overcomes this labor shortage?
Good question. Is it attracting foreign talent? Is it fixing the training pipeline? Is it technology adoption?
Or something else entirely? And maybe think about an unexpected consequence, could be good, could be bad, of the solutions being put in place right now. Well, what might happen that we aren't anticipating?
Definitely something to chew on.
It is. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.